But you would have seen it because the reservoir captured the floods.
No, absolutely.
But the reservoir rose, I think, something like 20 feet in one night.
Yeah.
So there would have been a tremendous flash flood.
Yeah,
that
yeah. So there was stuff going on further upstream, but my reports were just around us that we hadn't had about.
Just so I understand,
because the catchment is much bigger than just
huge.
in San Ignacio area.
Oh, huge.
Yeah.
We did not anticipate this level of sedimentation.
First of all, I'm not sure, and that's one of the reasons why we haven't spoken much about it, because when we're speaking in public, invariably we end up in court and what you have to say is there, right?
Oh dear.
So we have to be very careful. We don't, and I know B called Steve Usher is very careful. He doesn't say anything until he checks his facts and make sure he knows what is happening, right?
Okay.
He thinks it is not sedimentation. He thinks it's not siltation. He thinks it's a case of stratification of the lake, and that we've had a higher than usual amount of runoff from the forest, people clearing the forest and stuff like that. And so he feels that there's been a heavier amount of sediment in the water coming down the river, and because the flood waters are colder, that's something which the environmentalists had concerns about with respect to fish life, that a body of water tends to have stratification in the temperature of the water. Like, you know, if you stand in, say, the ocean or in the lagoon or stuff, you could feel the bottom in deeper water, the bottom is colder than the top. So they think, and this is what their hydrologist is thinking, that the colder flood waters is coming in at the bottom of the lake. So the lake looks clear at the top because the older water, but that flood water, which normally would have flown through San Ignacio and caused a big flood, and after a week die away, is captured in the dam, and now it's coming out through the thing. Now, what that would mean is that the flood waters are taking longer to get out than it would otherwise have if the dam wasn't there. So I think, first of all, I think Mick will agree with me that the sedimentation is not caused by the dam. Right, but the
sedimentation is not caused by the dam. I've got a couple of issues here, Lynn, which I would argue.
But the nature of the flow down the river, the fact that the dam captures floodwaters, will then stretch out the time that it takes for the river to clear up. Now, I think that they have an element, they might be onto it because, and they have to wait until the dry season to go down and check the sediments, because you're talking about 100 feet of water. And to have divers diving in this time of the year is not safe. Especially with flash floods and all that come in, right? And that's a lot. But they want to wait until the dry season to take the reservoir down to its lowest level and then check the sedimentation.
But then why is it not safe? I mean...
But what I was going to say, Mick, is that shortly after...
One thing I have to challenge you on here, certainly...
Listen, I'm not saying these are facts. I'm just saying this is a theory.
And Steve, who I also speak and known for, Steve's comment, I mean, I would like to know definitely where the deforestation is going on upstream of the Chalillo Dam.
And he got that information from forestry.
From forestry?
Yeah, the people from forestry had looked at it and said
well,
that
I'm sorry, I would challenge that hugely, because, well, I mean, the thing is, you have to, because you can't just have people coming out and saying, well, all the way back in the bush there, they're chopping down all the forests, and they're going, and it was the chateros who were supposed to be causing the problem. The chateros were up there, but they have these tiny little camps. They're not going in and deforesting. Now, what I would like to suggest here, that the problem initiated back with the bark beetle, which happened between 2000 and 2001. Okay, and when that happened, it took out almost 80% of the pine environment in the mountain pine ridge. It was a huge area.
Yeah, I remember seeing that indeed.
Okay, and this was one of our concerns as, so-called environmentalists, or, one of the questions we had about the dam was that if you got all the trees dying, the trees hold on, the root systems hold on to all the, to all the soil and everything else, sedimentation. The fact that all the trees died, they then were a fire hazard. And sure enough, in 2007, and there's actually a thing here which is really quite interesting, which I'll pass over to you. But anyway, the fires.
There were a lot of fires.
The fires.
In recent years.
Yeah, 17.
I think that's what the guys from forestry were saying. I didn't think
there was 17,500 acres of forestry in the catchment area of the Chalillo, which got burned. you know.
Yeah.
So, but this should have been, the signal should have been going out about this for a long time, and consequently, the colour that we're seeing in the river is that yellow sandstone cover, which is
You have a picture, yeah? You wanna?
Well, I was looking for the somewhere. I had no, the one it was actually a graph which I took off the.
Well, I think the point, the problem though is really, you know, how
I think we got to do some testing.
Well,
we got to find out.
And that's something that I think was pointed out.
The point is we don't know. Essentially what you're saying is we're just speculating. We just don't know what's causing it.
We are on the same side as Mick because we feel that the watershed needs to be protected. For both for the quality of the water down the stream and also for the life of the dam. But I think, again, you know, coming back to the environmental issues, right? You know, as Mick said, we're probably going to know for sure a lot of these things down the road, right? But for sure...
How long down the road? I mean,
well, you know, I have a fairly good idea what to expect because we have looked at dams in the region and seen what's been the performance, and we kind of know, for example, that in Honduras, the biggest problem they have in Honduras is deforestation in the catchment area. That is a challenge that as a country we're going to have to face. Whether or not you have a dam, you're going to have problems. I mean, in other countries where they don't have a dam and they have deforestation, the environmental problems are still there with the runoffs and the mudslides and everything else. So that is a problem that, what I'm saying is that it is not a dam that's causing that problem per se. But
it exacerbates it, doesn't it?
Well, I think personally it's a question. It's a question of whether you're going to have a flash flood with a lot of mud coming down, or whether it gets strung out. And I'm not an expert in it, so I won't.
Well, frankly, when it came down, I mean, you know, one of the big things about BCOL is that he keeps on crowing about is the fact that there's no more flooding downstream. Well, to be quite honest with you, flooding downstream was healthy for the river. It was healthy, you know, for the fields and things. It was unfortunate if people's houses went under, but people knew where the floodplain was and should not have built in the floodplain. That is the whole life of a river, is the way it breathes like that. So, you know, what has happened now is that all that siltation, which used to come down and actually, you know, fertilize, if you like to say it, the sides of the river, is now being held back behind the wall, as you quite rightly say.
It's coming out at a
slow, it's all sedimenting down to the bottom. My question.
You know what? I still think we need to wait until we can lower the reservoir level and check the level of siltation, because it may very well be that it is just the sediments that the floodwaters are carrying that's coming through, and like I said, the fact that the dam slows the release
of it.
But so if that is the case, then I mean you can't have your on the one hand you're saying don't flush the dam, and on the other hand you're saying the flash floods are good.
You have to flush the dam. You don't have any options.
The dam wasn't built with a flush gate.
What?
The dam wasn't built with a
flush gate. But what's the huge great culvert down at the bottom here?
Yeah, that is what it's called. It's a valve that was put in for an environmental flow. So that, for example, if you're not generating, you can keep water coming down into the river. And what had happened back then is that one of the generators was down. And so because one of the generators was down, the water coming in to the dam was coming in pretty fast, right? And for us to keep Mullion at the 25 megawatts, we had to supplement it by opening the valve. That valve is at the same level as the generating plant. So whether or not you open that valve, the color of the water coming out would have been the same, but that is not a flushing valve. A flushing gate would have been way down at the bottom.
Gentlemen, I don't think very many people know what we're talking about here, so we need to redirect the conversation.
But I mean, I think the
only way to desilt that dam would be dredging if we need to desilt it.
But first we need to figure out what's creating the problem.
Well, of course, you don't want to.
And that's underway. That's going to be done very soon.
Well, they did a little sail over with what do you call it? The sounding device, and you know the fish finding.
Sonar.
Sonar device. But that just gives a sort of indication. The indication seems to be that the silt is still very much below the intake of the valve and the generating plant. But again, there's quite a wide margin of error with those devices, so we aren't going by that alone. We need to.
Well, we unfortunately need to take a short break, and we'll be right back.